back to Let's Do Something, where today we're going to try to get this exhaust, I guess, fixed up on the F350. So, I don't think I've ever shown any videos of this. The exhaust on this is a 6-inch straight pipe. It used to be a 6-inch into a stack. I ended up taking the stack out because I just personally wasn't a fan. It made the truck obnoxious. I have a 3-year-old little girl that rides with me, which is my daughter. And, I mean, we couldn't even have a conversation. The exhaust was so loud. Don't get me wrong, it's still very loud. But having it dumped by the rear axle compared to right behind your heads, there is a major difference. So, the way, or at least my idea on this, as of right now, I went to the local parts store and I got one of the universal exhaust hangers. Which, the only reason we're even using this is because of the little rubber right here in the center. It'll take a lot of the vibration out of the pipe. Which, being a 6-inch pipe, we're not going to be able to use this, obviously. So what I'm going to do is we're going to take this part here on the bottom that goes to the exhaust pipe, and I'm going to do 2 welds in each bolt hole. I'm going to weld here and weld here, and that'll stick it to the top of the pipe, and then we're just going to run it straight up. And I have this that I made, which is a piece of all thread, a piece of flat stock, and 2 bolts, or 2 nuts. And I have lock washers on them too, because obviously the exhaust, there's going to be a ton of vibration. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to fold it over, or bend it over, probably as far down as I can on this, because we don't want a bunch of leverage on any of this, because that pipe already is pretty heavy. I have a ratchet strap under there right now, because when I first put the straight pipe in, I just needed something to help hold the exhaust. You know, just keep it straight until I got around to doing this. So, first things first, we got to get that ratchet strap off. I'm probably going to move the exhaust forward a little bit, because right now it's dumping right in front of the axle tube on the rear end. And I'm starting to think that's not a very good idea, because that axle tube is covered in soot. It's burnt the paint off of it, so I know it's getting hot. So what we're going to do is I'm probably going to cut about 4 inches out of the exhaust, at least the straight pipe, which I'm going to keep that 4 inches just in case. You know what I mean. You know how it is with car exhausts. You constantly change them, find different things you want to do. It's just part of doing custom things to your vehicle. So, once again, since this is a custom exhaust and it's just been pieced together over time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut probably the 4 inches out, like I said. We're going to move it forward to get it off that, the axle tube. And then I'm going to put this, I have a 90-degree tip that puts it straight at the ground, because it was coming out of the stack. Then I had it coming out of the side. But obviously if there's any cars beside you or parked on the street, you smoke them out, and that's just going to start fights. I mean, let's be honest, it's going to start a fight. So we're going to do what we got to do. We're going to get this welded on. After I get this top piece here bent, which I'm probably going to have to heat it to bend it, because this is fairly thick. I don't know if y'all can tell, but I mean, that's probably, I don't know, a 1/16, maybe a little thicker. And then I've got to get this piece here. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to put a bend in it, because I'm going to weld this part to the frame or to the underside of the bed, just wherever I can find a good spot. This has a gooseneck hitch in it, so there's a big steel plate welded in for the 5th wheel attachment. So I may just attach it to that plate. I don't know yet. I haven't decided. I ain't even looked yet. But all in all, like I said, we're going to bend it. I got to drill that hole out to a little bit bigger size, get another nut, and we'll be good to go. And by the way, I am putting some blue Loctite on all of these nuts, because the last thing we want is for this to just come loose on its own. So, and the whole exhaust is put together with band clamps also. So, I mean, if we drop the exhaust hanger, the exhaust is probably going to go to the ground. That's why we want to make sure we have good solid hangers. So, no further ado, I'm going to get this stuff bent up, get it ready to get put in, and then we'll get you all under there and I'll show you what we're looking at. So as you can see, I got this bent up, and what you can notice is, you remember from a while ago that this was straight up and down. I bent this over and then folded it in half, so you can see it's doubled up there. The reason I folded it over the hanger like this is to help center up the mount, because once there's weight on this, obviously when it's straight up and down, if I just do a bend out, a real simple bend, then have the other half holding it, it's going to tweak the mount obviously like that once there's weight on it. So what I'm hoping by doing this and bringing it over like I have is once I get weight on it, it's going to help hold it straight up and down. You can see what I'm saying. Instead of trying to force it and roll it out, hopefully it'll be strong enough to help keep it nice and straight and still kill vibration without flexing out the exhaust hanger that we're making up here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm debating on putting just a tack weld on each side of this fold to help make sure that over time it doesn't start to open back up, because obviously that'll let our exhaust hang back down lower than we want to, which means we'll be in there raising it back up constantly. So I like to do everything right the first time, or do overkill. I'll do more than I need to just to make sure I don't have to do it ever again, unless I want to, obviously. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put a tack weld on each side of this, then I'm going to clean it up, probably put a small coat of spray paint on this top half here, then get under there, weld this part on, and weld on that other piece to the frame or wherever I can find to put it that I'm happy with. And then we'll cover it all in probably some undercoating, or I have a rubberized sealer that I like to use quite a bit. It's a little more durable than the undercoating. So we'll give it a coat of that just to keep it from rusting out or looking like garbage, and then we'll go from there. So first things first, what I'm going to do is put a little weld on this, then we're going to get under the truck and start to install it. I'm going to go ahead and put the tack weld on this. Yes, that's tape on this jacket because I wear it welding. They always tell you, get welding jackets and stuff like that. They're made out of a material that doesn't catch. But anyways, we're gonna go ahead and put the tack welds on this, and I figured I'd let y'all come along for the ride. So I have a flux wire, so what I'm gonna do is I like to have the wire feed at about 4.5. And obviously I have it grounded in one of the cleaner areas on this clamp because I've already taken it over to the wire wheel and cleaned everything off. So now I'm just going to go ahead and run a tack on it, and we're going to call it good. I was just burning off that extra wire that had been poking out. A lot of moisture gets into this garage, so the end of the wire was rusted. So alright, now I'm going to put a tack on the outside and the very end of each of these bends in case this bend where I bent it, obviously metal don't really like to stretch, so it can cause cracks, and over time it can break. So we're going to put a weld here and a weld here. Honestly, I'm probably just going to go ahead and go all the way across it. Do more than you have to the first time, and then you never have to do it again. Alright, the reason you keep seeing me stopping like that is because I have this thing turned up pretty hot and I ain't trying to burn through it. And yeah, the welds ain't the greatest, but they hold. And that's all I care about. And anybody can be a pro. What is it? Anybody can be a professional welder as long as you have a grinder and spray paint. Put a small weld right here on the back side where these two holes are drilled, Just because, no real reason. There it is. Now, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pick this up with some pliers, take it over and cool it off in some water so it doesn't melt that rubber. Alright, so as y'all remember, we left off with getting this welded up and kind of bent into the shape that I wanted. So anyways, our next step is, well, I'm going to take off the band clamp on this exhaust and I'm going to drop the rear half of the exhaust down. But before that, I was kind of wanting to show you all the reason for doing all of this and the reason I'm going to be cutting part of this off and shortening it up. I just kind of want to show you all the way this is sitting under here. So I'm going to get you turned around and show you what I'm looking at, and maybe then y'all can understand why I'm doing the things I'm doing here. Alright, so here's the band clamp on my exhaust. I've already loosened it a little bit. That's why, obviously, you can tell a difference in the gap there. But right here is how I currently have the exhaust held in place. I have it ratchet strapped under the truck just for a quick and easy down and dirty, kind of get it held where I wanted. But as you can see, the length of the exhaust it's a little too long. I have it sitting right on the rear housing. And as you can see, I know it's getting it hot because it's now got a leak. So I'm going to have to redo that front gasket seal because I've already redid the rear, whatever you call those, the hog head or the cover. Already redid that gasket, redid the fluid, and now the front cone's leaking a little bit. So we got to have this drive shaft taken out and rebalanced. It's got a slight vibration to it at about 70, 75. But we're slowly getting to all of this. So with this, as you can see, I can kind of pull it over, which once I do the exhaust mount, I could just pull it over and it'd probably be fine. But it's still awfully close to the sway arm mount. So that's why we're going to come up in here. I'll probably just cut these tack welds on my 90 here. Go ahead and cut those tack welds and just cut probably 2 to 3 more inches out of this. And just scoot it up, the whole thing back, and that would make it to where I can use that all thread piece without the flat bar, without that piece of flat stock. Just stick it through the hole, thread it up in there, and have it hold the exhaust where it's supposed to be. So first things first, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to get this clamp off, and then we're going to undo the ratchet strap and drop down this rear section of exhaust here so we can redo what we're doing. And I'll tell you, the best part about these band clamps is it doesn't kink the piping. You can constantly change your exhaust and just keep reusing the same exact clamps. No big deal, but you can see here what I had to do was I cut a little bit off of another piece of pipe, slid it onto this and welded it on, so that way it would fit over this other portion here. That was a part of the bottom of the old stack right there. So I just cut it, welded it on, and of course it's exhaust, so I didn't care too much about how the welds looked as long as they held, and from the looks of it they are. And then you just tighten them down and you're ready to rock. So now that I got that undone, I'm going to drop this ratchet strap and pull this piece of exhaust pipe out, and then I'll get back with y'all. I got a mark on the pipe right here, and that's where I want to have the center of this mount. But as you can see, there's a lip where this obviously isn't rounded for the pipe. So what I'm going to do is I got a little torch. We're going to heat up these tabs and bend them around. The only reason I want to heat them instead of just bending it cold is I actually want them to wrap instead of... I'm going to take this here, it's just a little propane torch, and we're just going to heat this tab up, get it to wrap around as evenly as possible. And then we're just going to use I'm probably going to try tapping it with a hammer and get it to lay flat on each side. Once again, just these tabs. I'm not worried about any of the rest. I just want this tab right here to go. As you can see, we're already up to red hot. So we're going to shut it off. We're going to bend it. So I've got it hot, so take the hammer and I'm just going to tap it until it lays flat. Alright, so after that, where I done dropped the camera and everything, set this back up here. Alright, as you can see, we got that one to kind of lay and wrap around. Now we're going to do the same thing to this other side here. And I have some water I can douse this in just to keep from melting the rubber. But we'll do all that after we get the other side heated and bent. And by the way, if you live in colder areas, like I live in Kentucky, so right now it's January 20-something. So I mean, it ain't as cold as it usually is, but it's still fairly cold. What I do is take this little propane torch and stick it in front of the heater just for a minute, not very long, because it's dangerous. But you just want to warm the can up a little bit because it causes the gas to re-expand, because when it's cold, the propane condenses. And these torches are super weak when they're like that. So you just want to take it and just warm it up slightly. Like what I do is stick mine, I have a jet heater is what I call them. It's one of them propane or diesel fuel heaters. What I do is hold the can and literally stick it in front of it until I can feel the heat on the propane cylinder. So I mean, probably a minute at most, maybe 1 minute in front of the heat. Alright, now we got them bent. We could bring this other side around just a little more. So we're going to get it back over here. Kind of tap the tip just a hair. Now what I'm going to do is take the pliers and just go ahead and finish out that bend just a little bit more. Just make it a little snugger where I'm going to be putting a weld there. Like I said, as you can see, I didn't do it much. I just put a little kink on each side. And that's more than enough to get it to sit fairly tight. And now we're ready to put a tack weld on it, put it on the exhaust. And I am going to have it sitting just like this under the truck. The rubber to the rear. I mean, I could do it this direction, and it really doesn't matter. It's up to you. Just for the way I'm doing it, I'm going to be kind of drawing it forward. So I want to have the pull to the back of the rubber. And that's literally all because I've got the all thread rod I have going up to that hole, and I've got it positioned forward in front of the hole, so that way it pulls the exhaust backwards to keep tension forward on the exhaust, just to help keep more of the vibration out. Alright, so I got it for the most part set up the way I want. All I'm going to do is do 2 tack welds, and we're going to get under the truck and check fitment to make sure everything's sitting the way I want it to and the way I like. And the reason you do 2 small tack welds, if you don't know, which I'm sure most people know, is you do 2 small tacks, so that way if it's not the way you want and you want to change it, it's just as simple as cutting those 2 little tack welds and then readjusting whatever it is you're trying to do. So, like I said, I'm going to do a small tack weld. We're going to get under the truck, see how it sits, and as long as we like it, we're going to pull it back out, and I'm going to do a little bit small bead on each end of this bracket, and then we'll be ready to rock. Alright, and the reason I put a tack on this side on this corner and this side on the other, it'll keep it from flexing forward or back or side to side. That's just how I personally like to do it. I'll put tacks on opposing corners, and that'll help keep a lot of the rock out of the piece when you do your test fit. Because if you do them both on the same side, that'll allow it to twist forward or however. So that's just a little tip I figured I'd throw in for y'all. Alright, so as you can see, I got a smaller piece of all thread because obviously I don't need an 18-inch long piece. So I cut a shorter piece here, and a trick when you're cutting all thread is, you know how obviously bolts have these beveled ends here, where the thread's just a tad bit different, which the camera ain't going to focus, but there you go. You can kind of see it there. When you cut it, it messes all that up. So what I do is come over to the bench grinder, and you just put it in at an angle. And you're just going to knock that edge off. Kind of dull it down a little. And as you can see, it's not a perfectly straight cut, so I'm going to kind of come in like this. I'm going to work on flattening it out a little bit. So that's quite a bit flatter. Hit it one more time, and now you can see it's got that beveled end. So the best way to check is after you do that, come over to your nut. And you just see if you can get it to thread up. It's as simple as that, which doing it with one hand while holding the camera is not that simple, but. So you get your nut, you start trying to walk it on. Alright, so it's not wanting to go on. So we'll look at it, and it looks like we've collapsed a thread, which that's not that big of a deal. We're just going to come over here to the grinder again. We're going to hit it where that thread's collapsed. Alright, so now that's looking a lot better. I know you can't tell because this camera is killing me. I think it's got a lot to do with the lighting in here, but so we kind of rounded it off a little more. We've got that bad thread undone, or I guess cleaned up, and right there it's starting to catch. So that's just something I figured I would share with y'all. It's as simple as going to a bench grinder, hand grinder, flap disc, grinder wheel, cutting wheel. You just go to the edge of the all thread and kind of spin it. There you go. Now you can see it. And you just round off the end. And that's all there is to it.